It doesn't matter how much you make, it matters how much you keep. So that is what wealth is all about. There's two different ways that you can look at wealth. There's two different types of financial statements. And one of them, and I promise this won't be as painful as it sounds. It's not going to be bad. Financial statements. Will just be a minute. All right, we have one that we call the income statement. This is a rough class, rough crowd. All right, so the income statement. The income statement is a statement of your income. So you have your income and your expenses. If this was for a normal person, we would say that this was your budget. So how much money you get every month, how much money you spend on your expenses, and then whatever's left over, you take your income, you subtract out your expenses, and then you have your extra or your savings, or there's a lot of different ways that people look at the money that's left over. There are a lot of people who are income statement rich. They have a lot of money coming in here. But like we said, if there's a lot of money going out here, there's no extra. You know, you think about it. It doesn't really matter where you are. If you're spending it all, you're devastated when half of it goes away. So, no, you cannot tell how wealthy somebody is based on their income. Let's look at the second type of financial statement. Is called a balance sheet. BS, but in accounting we always remember to put that slash between it so it isn't quite so BS. So, all right, so on the balance sheet you've got two different sides and they have to balance. That's why you call it a balance sheet. On one side you have something called assets, and on the other side you have liabilities. What are assets?
House, car, your income, savings.
Okay, liabilities is stuff that you own.
You said assets.
Oh, sorry, my apologies. So assets are things that you own, liabilities are things that you owe. This is your debt. So if you have a house that's worth $1 million, do you have an asset worth $1 million? You have an asset worth $1 million, but you balance it off against the liability that is your mortgage. So yeah, you might have a nice big asset, but you're going to subtract out the liability. So it's not your assets alone. Your assets don't tell you what your net worth is or what your wealth is. The difference between the two. You only have wealth if you have assets greater than liabilities. This is the wealth box. Sometimes we call it net worth. That's the only definition of wealth that's reasonable in financial terms. How much money coming in doesn't make any difference. How much assets you own, if they're all mortgaged, if there's liabilities against them, doesn't mean anything. The only thing that matters is that difference between your assets and your liabilities. Every dollar that comes into your life comes in through this income box. So all of it comes in through here, and it can only go one of three places, right? It can go down to the expenses, it can go over to assets, it can go over here. So if your dollar is being used, if you're saving it, it's going to make the assets box a little bit bigger, which in turn makes the wealth box a little bit bigger. So a dollar comes in, you save it, you use it to buy an investment, it makes your wealth bigger. If you use the income to pay down your liabilities, it makes the liabilities box smaller, which also makes the wealth box bigger. Either one of those two things increase your wealth.
You said the last part again about liability.
See how the liabilities and the assets balance out against each other? Or see, the wealth is what creates the balance. So let's say you had $100 worth of liabilities and $200 worth of assets. So your wealth would be $100. If you reduced your liabilities to $99, you still have $200 worth of assets, so your wealth goes up by $1. Because you have fewer assets, the smaller this box gets, the bigger the wealth gets. Does that make sense? So every dollar that you pay off your liabilities, you are creating wealth. The only way that you don't create wealth with every dollar that comes in is the most common thing that we do with the dollars that come in. We pay expenses, and that money goes straight out. There's nothing wrong with expenses. Expenses, using things up, living your life, having great adventures, doing fun things, buying nice meals, nothing wrong with it. As long as you are putting some stuff over here onto your balance sheet. Because you can't build wealth any other way. There's no way to build wealth with expenses by spending all of your money on expenses. Does that make sense?